Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, it's Joanna Hunter here for the Into the LightWeb podcast, and I am joined in today's episode on the $1 Million Lab series by the gorgeous Laura Muirhead. She is an artist, healer, and sage, a long-term client of mine, plus the CFO of a multi-million-dollar company. I am so excited to share this episode with you because Laura's story is absolutely incredible, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Hi, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, Joanna Hunter. And for this $1 Million Lab series, I have a very, very special guest. I'm so excited because this guest has been a long-time client of mine as well, and I'm so excited to share her with you. Her name is Laura Muirhead. She is an artist, healer, and sage of lauramuirhead.com. And I'm just going to hand it over to Laura to introduce herself a bit more and tell you guys a bit more about herself.
Hi, thanks so much, Joanna. Thanks. I'm so honored to be here and be part of your podcast and of course, participating in your $1 Million experiment this year. I am Laura Muirhead, like you mentioned. I'm an artist, healer, and sage, and a CFO of a multi-million-dollar corporation here in the US.
So me and you have been working for quite some time. So we could literally, this is going to be a big conversation because we can literally talk the hind legs of a donkey. And so there's been so many shifts since. So Laura first came into my world when you joined me on a retreat. We'd known each other before, like from other groups that we were in online. And then you came along on a retreat, and that was the start of a really cool journey that we've been on together, which is really cool. And one of the things I'm so excited to share right now is Laura's actually sat in her studio, which literally was one of the things that we have created during the time of working together. Laura opened a studio during the pandemic, which is huge kudos to her for that. So tell me a little bit about when we first came into this world. You were already a CFO of the company, but I remember so distinctly when in one of the days in the retreat, it was like people were not leaving you alone to just enjoy this retreat in Scotland. They were all at you, they were like, it was like you were still working even though we were on the retreat. And I remember you going, I am like the chief money juggler. And it was it felt so much like it was all on you. So take us back to that time, Laura, and tell us a little bit what that was like back then.
Yeah, well, and that's it. I mean, for some people, if anybody out there owns their own company or, is part of and being an entrepreneur, I don't really get vacations, even if I'm on a retreat in Scotland with Joanna Hunter, and we're going to all the sacred sites and doing all the fun things. I'm still having to check back in with what's going on with the company back in the States, and with the 5-hour time change. And so, yeah, I was getting up early in the morning to check in with things and, with my husband, and he's, in the middle of the night sleeping or at the last minute before I went to bed, double checking things. And we do payroll weekly. So, especially back then, payroll was my responsibility. So being even there, I had to make sure that I fit the time in to do payroll and send it through to get it done. And it was, a lot of juggling and transferring money between accounts and trying to make sure everybody was, happy and where, money where it needed to be at the time.
It's a bit like that song, Where's the Love? But for Laura, it was Where Was the Ease, Joy, and Flow, right? In the beginning, because it was and so as we've been working together and moving, forward and things like that, a lot of things have shifted and changed. And of course, payroll used to be your job, but it's not anymore. And things like that. So many things have shifted and changed. And we met, we then did a VIP day out in Washington. We were out there. So that was super fun. And we laid down the groundwork for this huge vision for you and for your business. And we came up with these ideas of your beautiful journals that I can see in the background there. And we came up with so many ideas in that thing. And then in the space of a year, we literally ticked everything off the box. And I remember speaking to you and asking you, um, there was some stuff that you had, like some money that was kind of in the out in the world, right? But it hadn't come to you yet. Like there was a piece of property that you were trying to sell. There was a lawsuit that you were waiting on a settlement payment to come in, but nothing had really happened and stuff. And I remember sitting talking to you about that on that retreat or on that VIP day out in Washington. And I said, and I remember saying to you, well, how much would you like? And you were like, what do you mean how much would I like? And I'm like, well, give me a figure. Like, what do you want? Like, we can make this happen. And so you said, well, it would be really, like, I think for the settlement, you said, well, it would be really great if we could get like this. And it was like this figure that you gave me. But then you immediately was like, but the guy said, we're lucky if we get this, which was a lot lower. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like fun. Let's go for the higher number, and see what happens. So as we put together and we worked together, one of the big things that we worked with you on is like your mindset and how you're feeling and literally your connection to yourself. And during that process as well, you also trained as one of my LightWeb priestesses. So tell us a little bit, Laura, about like working on all the things, because you are no stranger to being an entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur for many years. You've had a barn where you did horses, you've had a bread store, you've had a lot of different types of businesses. You're the CFO of a massive company that does works with boats and shipping and boat repair and things like that. So lots and lots of, like me, lots and lots of varied businesses. And now you have your studio for your art and your healing. So tell us a little bit about because before, obviously, under your own steam, you've done really well in many different niches and many different things. But when we started looking at the actual healing aspect of that, tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, like you said, I have had all these different things. And I think sometimes people think, oh, for heaven's sakes, couldn't you just have a hobby instead of, making a business out of everything, when I was growing up, one of the things my dad had said to me was, well, you're a jack of all trades and master of none. Maybe you've heard, a lot of people have heard that
Oh,
saying.
I've heard that.
It's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily feel good, because not everyone it grows up to be the piano, it's concerto or whatever. And some people do, and that's wonderful if that, if you have one path and one mission. But for me, definitely not. And I've had, like you said, all these different things. But working in, when we were in Washington and did our VIP day, it's so interesting to now look back on that and see the things that we wrote down, and some of the things where I was like, oh, eek, like we're gonna do that. How are we gonna do that? But working with you, obviously we have, and I have done a lot of work with you and on myself and on my mindset in different ways. And it's just such a shift. There's been such an amazing shift, and to see that we did, we were able to create all these things within the space of a year, to get the studio and to bring it up and running, and these visions that have come true. But I think that, and even working, I was already CFO of the business, the ship repair business, when we started working together. But just to have my mindset shift from, holding on to the, like, oh, I'm not going to pay that bill yet because I want to make sure the check comes in tomorrow or the next week. They've promised us or whatever, to I'm writing the check, the money's coming, like, and just
Huge
knowing that,
shift.
yeah, it's a big shift, and it's been, I can't even say like I don't, it didn't happen one day. I didn't just wake up and it happened, but it just progressed over time. And now it's just a completely different space. And especially LightWeb, oh my gosh, like that, to be able to use the tools in LightWeb, and to, I'm just so grateful for that, and to have those not only for myself, but know that they're there to help others, that I can use those tools to help others as well. And I think it's just amazing, what has transpired.
It is. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. One of the things that really, really played in your mind was this bread store that you'd had. Because tell us a little bit about the run up to the bread store, because there's not a conventional story at all. Like you don't wake up one day and think, I will do a bread store. But especially when you're not, you know, um, you've not grown up around bakeries or being a baker or anything like that, right? But there was a whole thing that happened beforehand, because there was many reasons I wanted to speak to Laura. Not only is Laura one of my LightWeb priestesses and has transformed her energy, it's really night and day to where she was to where she is now. Not only is she the CFO of a multi-million-dollar company, but Laura, I'm going to let you say it, because what happened to you when, it is something that I think we all hope and dream for. I knew I did for years. I wanted this to happen to me, and it actually happened to you. So tell us what happened to you.
So I actually won the lottery. I was living in California, and just, it was the drawing was going to be on January 1st. And I had always kind of felt like, first of the year, you better have a lottery ticket and start your year off right. And turns out I won. And so back then we didn't have um, it wasn't, you didn't have the choice of taking a lump sum or having the payouts over 20 years. So it was a 20-year payout, which was great. And my daughter was 2.5, and I was pregnant with my son. And so it was, it was really, it was obviously life changing. And this is one of the things that I talk about too, is that Joanna and I have worked on a program that I'm going to have called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life." And these are some of the twists and turns that your life might take. And some of them are maybe not so good, and some of them are really great. But the lottery was one of the ones that was really great. And so we were able to, because of that, and having those funds, obviously I could be a little more
So when
creative.
is this back? This is back in what year?
This was in 1994.
So in 1994. So you have this massive lottery win. They're going to pay it out over 20 years. Overnight, you and your husband's life, and you've pregnant, you've got a little one, has completely changed and transformed. But it was, like, it was a great thing that happened, but at the same time, it wasn't all smooth sailing, because there was issues started coming up. But you were able to do some really wonderful things for people, which was really lovely. And we've worked on this in a way, because sometimes when that sudden influx of money comes, it's not a case of smooth sailing. um
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, there are people, I really at the time, for many years, didn't like to talk about that, say that I won the lottery, because I didn't want people to view me a different way. I didn't want people to be like, oh, well, she's the one who won the lottery. And that was all I was known for, because I
mm.
obviously was a lot of other things. I was a mom, and, all the, other things. And I had other accomplishments in my life. But one thing that so there were some not fun things with some family members and people expecting things, but there were good things as far as, ways that I could be generous and help my friends. I had a friend who was in a situation where she was getting divorced, and had quit her job to be a mom. And all of a sudden here she found herself, getting divorced and didn't have a job, needed to get one, but she had a leased car and the car was going to be turned, the lease was up. So how do I buy a car when I don't have a job? How do I get a job when I don't have a car? So, I was able to like help her buy a car. I was able to help some other friends with their kids going to college. Obviously, I was able to help my own. My children had a very comfortable life, and that was really nice. But one of the things that I decided to do was have this bread store, and I went in with some friends to do that, and not knowing and not being aware of the people that there was already a bread store in existence. And so we were modeling that. And we took that person's at face value, his word, that he was having a successful business. And when we modeled it, we found out later on that he wasn't completely honest with us as far as what his numbers were and how successful he was. And, it was a learning experience and a challenge, because we basically ended up at the time kind of pouring money into this bread store, to try to keep it going and try to get it to be successful, with all these other challenges, and not having set it up properly because of not knowing. And I'm not trying to, I take full responsibility. We learned as we went, but we didn't start out with the best step up towards it. Let's say
Yeah,
that.
the best intentions, I think, like it's that intention piece, like where is our alignment, where is our intention? And that was one of the really powerful lessons that we were able to extract from that while working together was, where was I at? Where was my mind at? Where was I present at? And things like that. And although you had a lot of really beautiful intentions, like you wanted to help your friends, and you wanted, you thought this was a really great thing with your friends. But then, of course, when the bread store didn't go as well as anticipated, then it was like you found yourself almost in a place of being blamed and a lot of animosity and things like that, which is really difficult. And I know, I mean, I had a business that was a partnership that didn't, it was definitely the lesson where I learned that I am a lone wolf and I do better if I'm the boss lady 100%. And I think you probably found that in that place as well. That's probably the big lesson from there. So over the years, you've had numerous different businesses. So we've had this bread store, which was, it sounds to me like it was just one really powerful, giant learning curve. Then tell us a little bit about your barn as well, because that was another business where you didn't have, what I love about Laura is a feet first person. So she jumps in feet first and learns on the way down, which I really admire about Laura, because it's such a powerful trait, because being willing to take a risk in business, I think, is really powerful. So you went on to do this barn, never really having, other than having a real love of horses, never really having run and stabled horses and things like that. So tell us a little bit about this big barn that you built.
Yeah, so kind of, I mean, I was able to ride horses when I was young, and then my parents got divorced, which ended, the horseback riding, unfortunately. So I think there was like this level of wanting to go back and fulfill that passion. So I started riding again, and next thing you know, I owned 2 horses, and I was at a stable that we didn't really love the way that was running. And actually my son got bit by the owner's dog, which was really that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back on that one. And she wasn't taking responsibility for her dog, and kind of what happened, she was supposed to quarantine the dog and she didn't. So then I was like, well, here I am with a couple horses, and what am I going to do? And so again, I started looking for property. Again, you couldn't just have a hobby. So I started looking for property. I bought 40 acres of land. It was a cornfield in Illinois, and built a barn, built a horse stable, with, I believe we had like 21 or 24 stalls. And my horse trainer came up and gave lessons, and we boarded horses. But yeah, we built the stable from the ground up. And I owned a show horse by then, and so we showed horses and went all over, you know. My daughter got involved in showing horses, so she had a horse. And yeah, we had all the things. We had the lesson horses and boarders, and it was a really, it was a nice, it was a much nicer experience than the bread store, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And I was relying a lot on my horse trainer, which I really, you know, I love her for that. And for, you know, we're still very good friends. And I still have one horse who's quite old, and he's living his best retirement life with her right now. So yeah, I really appreciate her. But yeah, it is, there was such a learning experience of, but I remember also though, at that time, thinking that a lot of the things that I had done in previous jobs really fit into what I was doing there, because I had a house on the property that I was renting out to someone. And when I had lived in California, I worked for a real estate broker, and I did property management for him. So I was like, well, I know how to rent out a house to, you know. And I have been a bookkeeper for quite a while, and obviously I could keep my, you know, do the books for my own stable, and, you know, and keep those things going. And then, you know, obviously my passion and my love of horses, we just did all the things. And I jumped in and worked hard on that. I shoveled rock and ran hot wire on fences, and, you know, did all the things. So yeah.
Amazing. So we then, because one of the things that you talked about and you mentioned earlier was a funny thing happened on the way to my life, which is something that has sort of come out of us working together. You came up with this thing, like a funny thing happened on the way to my life, because like your life has never really gone 100% according to plan. It's always been like a funny thing happened on the way to my life, like different, like there was no intention to have a barn, and then it was like, oh, let's start and look for property. And then there was like, oh, what can I do with my friends to help my friends out? Let's do a bread store. You know, there's always like this little twist to life keeps popping up. And it's something that we talk about a lot because, you know, obviously for many people, when it doesn't go according to plan, we can spiral downwards really deeply, deeply into our poor little me stories and things like that. And one of the things I really admire about Laura is that she's not a person to wallow in the poor little me. She's like, let me roll my sleeves up and do something here. So tell us a little bit about, let's move us on forward now from the barn. So where are you going next? Where because there's so many twists and turns to your story.
Well, so as it turns out, um, I ended up divorced in Illinois, and I had a smaller house with my horses. And I reconnected with who is now my husband, my current husband. And he and I had met years ago in California. He had been on a job in California, and we met on actually New Year's Eve. And so if we fast forward years and years later, I reconnected with him, and he spent his life in New Jersey and lived his whole life there. And so when we reconnected, we very quickly knew we had a strong enough connection that we wanted to get married. And but had to, you know, obviously had to bridge this. I lived in Illinois at the time, this Illinois New Jersey thing. So I ended up moving to New Jersey, and my current husband, Dan, he owned at the time, and still does, the ship repair business. And as it turns out, what a really interesting story for him, though, is that he worked for this company for years and years and years. And he worked his way up. He started at the bottom, worked his way up. And then one day, it was a family business. Started in 1929. It's still going today. So 90 something years later, here we are. And it had been passed down to the final family member in that family was a woman, and she passed away. She had no sons or daughters. So her estate was left to like 12 nieces and nephews. And if you ever can talk to Dan, he tells the story way better than I do, because this is really the Reader's Digest condensed version of it. But so one day the nieces and nephews had basically used up all the money in the company and ran it. Dan had been running it for them, and they said, we're done. We don't want to run this company anymore. We're going to close it. So Dan said, well, wait a minute. That means I'm not going to have a job, and neither are all these guys that work for this company. So I don't know how he worked it out, but he managed to work it out to buy the company, and they didn't make it easy for him. And he paid it off over 4 or 5 years and finally owned it. So when we reconnected, he owned the company. And when I moved to New Jersey, and he initially didn't have any intention of really working, there was no plan in place, like, oh, come and work with me in the company. But as the first year progressed, he would tell me things, and I was like, well, I'm a bookkeeper, I could do that. And then he would say something else. Well, I'm a bookkeeper, I could do that for you. So eventually, I guess I bothered him enough that he brought me on and made me CFO, and I started working with him. And there were challenges with that, but I think we now have a really good relationship as far as a working relationship. And I think that, that is a challenge too, when you work with your husband.
Partner, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always, well, I actually have always worked. I've worked with my husband since I was 15. Obviously, he was not my husband when I was 15, but that's where we met. And, we met at a workplace. And then, so we've often on and off over, nearly 30 years now worked together. And it is a challenge. It's not always the easiest, and it's not always the easiest not to try and bring the work home sometimes.
Yeah, the work, well, and these days I work from home, so the work is always at home with me. But I think I've been able to find a nice balance, especially now with the studio. But what happened after a few years, New Jersey has a lot of lovely houses on the shore, Jersey Shore. What most people have heard of the Jersey Shore. And we had a dream of having a house on the water. So we spent several months finding a house, and we finally found this house that we just were in love with, on the shore and on the water. And it was a really challenging escrow. I've never had such a challenging. It took us we made the initial offer in July, and it took us till December to close on the property. So, like when we finally moved in, it was just like, oh, whew, and getting things settled, and acclimating to living there. And little did we know that 9 months later, we would wake up at 3:30 in the morning to the house on fire, and it burned completely. It was completely.
Gutted.
Yeah, there was the ground level. It was a 3-story house, and the ground level was a garage and storage area. And there were some things on that level that we were able to salvage. But the other irony about that is, living on the water, I kept saying, anything that's down there on that level either needs to be up on shelves or up in the attic. So there were a lot of things that we moved up to the attic, because I was so like, oh, if we get, a storm, if we get a hurricane, everything will be ruined down there. So many things, at my insistence, were put up in the attic, only to have that. I mean, there is no attic. There's no attic. So, yeah, so that
was a huge challenge, and it was very dramatic. It was 3 a.m. Dan waking you up. You were like, what is going on? I think you grabbed your phone off your bedside. You were literally in your nightgown. Luckily you had lovely neighbors that took you in and saw you right. But just watching this dream house literally getting razed to the ground. And then we're like, we have got our dogs. We have got you and Dan, obviously the really important people in that house, right? And now now we are homeless, technically. We are houseless. We are like clothing less. We are things less. There was like no things. There's a phone, a nightgown, and whatever Dan's wearing, and your dogs.
Yeah.
And it's like, what now?
Yeah, that was it. And we, at the time, um, I was told by the coach I was working with to pay attention to the things that remained. And that was such a beautiful reframe for me, because I don't know what I would have, and that was as the house was burning, I was told that. And I don't know what I would have thought had I not had that. But, you know, we literally walked into the mall in our borrowed clothes that our neighbor had. Well, I had the neighbor's clothes on. Dan's brother lived not too far from us, and so he had his brother's clothes on. And I mean, I can't even imagine what kind of a vision we were walking into the mall and just buying like some clothes and some shoes and some underwear and a hair dryer. And one of the things, you know, for me that I had to purchase right away was another computer, because the computer was gone. I mean, Dan had to get a new phone that day. Like, I was the only one. I grabbed my phone to call 911, and that was it. So we were in a hotel for a month, and then with the insurance, we were able to be in a rental home, and it was a lovely rental home actually, but also on the water for 6 months until we could buy our home, another home in New Jersey. And then, but one of the things that, a couple things that came out of the fire, and I don't want to give it all away, but one of the couple of lovely things that happened was that not only were we able to buy the house in New Jersey, but we were able to very quickly after that buy a home here in Michigan, which started this journey.
Mm.
You know, eventually led to my studio. So we you know, we just made it work, and we pushed through. And even with the rental, we were in this, you know, in this um, hotel with our 3 dogs and our 1 cat. We found our cat the next day after the fire. But here we were in this, what I called the 3-room mansion at the Marriott Suites. And so we were, you know, we did feel lucky that we had our, you know, we had our lives, and we very quickly rebuilt, you know, rebuilt our things that we needed, like I said, to get the computer, get the things, get the phone. Our cars survived the fire, so we were fortunate with that. And
But I think a set of car keys didn't. They
yeah,
were gone. So we had a car that we can get into.
yeah, Dan's car was parked in the driveway. My car was in the garage. And actually, when we ran out of the house, it was Halloween morning, and so it was a little bit chilly. And here we are, you know, in our nighties and our underwear and t-shirts and no shoes and whatever. So the first thing Dan did to corral us was put us all in the car. And he actually ran next door to get our neighbor up, because, you know, we weren't sure where the fire was going to spread, and the houses are very close together. So he was pounding on the door with the neighbor, and we were calling his, you know, Dan's son to, you know, come and help us and whatever. This was after the 911 call. But that car, the keys were in the house. And so we had to have that car towed. But my car, this is one of those, like, pay attention to what survives things. And one of the miracles I think that happened was that I normally kept my car keys in my purse, which was, you know, upstairs in the living room in a cabinet, you know, put away. And so I told Dan, you know, by this time later in the morning, Dan was still at the house, the burned house, the fire was out. I was at his brother's house for the day. And I said, if you can find my purse, if it even is in any kind of condition, my keys are in it. And he found the purse, and he's like, your keys are not here. They are not here. And so I was like, oh my gosh. Well, by then my son had come down to help out. And I don't know what possessed him, but he got in my car and decided to push the button to see if it would start. And it started, which meant the keys were in the car. And so it turned out we had taken the dogs to the park a few days before that, and somehow the keys just fell into the car. And so it would have never happened that way. Would never be that way. So we were fortunate that we had that car that we could pull out of the driveway and use it to, you know, to drive. Dan's car got towed and we had another set of keys made. But yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that you just go, okay, thank you. Like we, we have a car to drive for the time
Yeah, it's
being.
amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And so, we've talked a lot about developing, obviously we helped you to, when we were working together, we brought out these journals. But a lot of the stuff that we've created together is really all you, Laura, because we've just been helping you to pull it out of you. But a big thing that really transpired during our journey working together was a funny thing happened on the way to our lives. And it is all about like the plot twists of life that, what you had planned. And even though they might be dreams, like there's a dream in New Jersey, one of the things that I think is so powerful with your story is that life sometimes doesn't work out the way that you thought it was going to work out. And so we have this dream house, it's now razed to the ground. But what came out of that was this ability to buy another house in New Jersey, but also to be able to look at property in Michigan where your mum is, and be able to have the Michigan house, which then led down a complete sidetrack because you weren't even an artist, at that point, really. It wasn't even your thing. It wasn't even your jam. And so tell us a little about your magic tiles, because your first book is all about these magic tiles. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, my children's book, Once Upon a Tile, Susie's Shower and Her Superpower. So when we bought the dream house on the water, well, let me back up just a minute. Right before we bought that house, I did take some art classes. My degree is in graphics production, but I did take some art classes and some drawing classes in college. And in my drawing class, I had drawn a tricycle. It was one of the things we had to do. One of the assignments. There was a tricycle in the middle of the room, and everybody's drawing it, and it was an ink drawing. So it was rolled up in my things in a drawer, and Dan came across it and wanted to surprise me for my birthday, so he had it framed. And so he framed it for me and we hung it up on the wall, and I kept looking at it and kind of started thinking, I was an artist at one point, wasn't I? I did do drawings and I did do graphics and these things. And so they kind of started a little stir. But then when we moved into the house on the water, I would, every day when I would get in the shower, I would see images in the tiles. And it started with, the first one was a horse that reminded me of one of my horses that I owned. And I was like, man, that just looks like the head of my horse. And it just kept bugging me every day. It was right at eye level. And so finally I was like, I'm just going to draw this. And so I had my iPad and just drew it out with the Procreate app, and was like, okay, that's fine. And that sort of satisfied my my desire to draw it. But then there was the next tile, and there was a tile that looked like a lion, and there was a tile that looked like my daughter's dog, and there was a tile that looked like a mermaid, and there was a tile, there's all these things. And so every one of them there was a teddy bear, they would bug me until I would draw them, and then I'd move on to the next one. Well, somehow I had this collection of drawings, and Dan started talking to people and saying, look, Laura drew this, look, Laura drew this. And I'd be like, oh, you drew this, oh. And so it was just really fun at the time to draw these things. And I was kind of like, I really didn't like telling people that I saw images and tiles, because which is what led to, ended up leading to the book. Was I had this collection of drawings, and someone said, why don't you do a children's book? And I was like, a children's book? And there were some drawings that really wouldn't fit in a children's book, but I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I have these different things. So I wrote the story, which is basically the same version of the story, but on the children's level, where Susie sees these things in the tiles and is afraid to tell people that she sees them, and it leads her down this path. But it encourages you to see things in a different way. So, and the other funny thing about the tiles is that my best friend said to me at one point, well, what are you going to do when you run out of tiles? What are you going to draw then? And I said, well, I've got hundreds of tiles in my bathroom, and well, sure enough, all those tiles burned in the fire. So, but I do still see things in tiles and see things in wood. But that led, obviously to the book. And then once we started coming here to Michigan on a consistent basis, there's actually a really lovely place here, the Artisan Center, where it's a mentoring facility, and people, you could go and learn all kinds of different things, woodworking or jewelry making or knitting or weaving, but painting. But what I ended up doing was pottery.
Yeah, I can
And
see it all behind you. It's absolutely gorgeous.
And I was fortunate enough to have a really, really great mentor teach me how to do pottery and use, I started out just hand building things, and that's really fun. But I kept looking at the wheel and kept looking at the wheel. And I was like, I don't know, I think I might want to try that. So finally, I got enough courage to do that, and just fell in love with that and the creativity of making pottery. So that also spurred the idea of, well, what if I had my own space to create? And by then I'd had all these other things too. I had the photos and the drawings and the, different artwork that I could incorporate into having, a space in the front of the studio that's a retail space. And yeah, it just like talking about a funny thing happened on the way to my life. Like, we didn't expect any of this to happen, and here we
No.
are. So, and it's beautiful.
And then that brought us kind of up to date, where we then met on the retreat, where you came to one of my retreats, one of my sacred site retreats. And then, we began working together. And then one of the big manifestations that we worked on was this studio. But we also worked on, because we had these pockets of money sort of due in, we worked on that, bringing that in together. And so we worked on that for like a year. And then last year, so we've been working together for a while, but last year, about a year into that process, it was like there was this month, it was like Laura's mega month. It just was crazy. Tell us a little bit about your energy shifts, because I think this would be really good for people who are in the $1 Million Lab, right? Because the reason we do the $1 Million containers a year is that you have the space to make the shifts. But like, the funny thing is, when the money actually started showing up, it was like literally like boom, 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 boom. It was like I was getting almost like daily messages, and you were going, oh my God, you can't believe what's happened. And it was so fun. But it was a culmination of the mindset work that you had done all the way through, because we had let go of a lot of things. There was a lot of like what I call janky energy stories. There was a lot of things. I remember you often, with most of us, we often are quite triggered by some people, and we can get triggered. And you were no exception to that. You had the people that can push your buttons, and we worked on that, and we worked on shedding a lot of that energy, and we looked at actually what was the trigger underneath the surface and all that. So talk us through a little bit about like some of the inner work that we've done, because you came up with this really cool framework during that process.
Yeah. So the framework is question, investigate, heal, and grow, which is what my two of the journals are based on, that framework. And it's just this idea that we need to have a look at things and look under the hood and what's really happening. One of the things we were trying to call in money wise was the property from the house that burned was still there and on the market. And, there was a lot of energy still attached to that, and we worked on letting go of. And
We even wrote Dan in, who's like a total skeptic, and we even had him like out on the property, like, because it's just land now, right? So out on the land doing a little ritual
we
to
did
let go.
we did an energy ritual and buried some crystals, and set it free for the next person to be happy living there, that we thanked it for the time that it had served us, because we did have some really fun, great memories there. And we had my son and his friends all summer, down almost every weekend, riding jet skis and going in the boat and having a great time, and the beautiful views that we had. And yeah, I mean, it did serve us well for the short time that we had it. But there is, like, you really have to have a look at what is happening in so many levels in your life if you want to bring the abundance in. And if you can look at, like, question and see, okay, well, how are things going? And then have a look and then go deeper to investigate. Okay, I see that these things look like they're okay, but this one, I probably need to have a harder look at that.
I
And
mean, there was a lot of attachment still to that property,
yeah,
and there had been trouble to try and sell it because of the attached energy. And
yeah,
as soon as we looked at that, it was almost the buyer came in almost immediately, but the sale didn't go through almost immediately. It just took a little while because we still had stuff to unhook. But yeah, so it's really interesting. You're right. It's that investigate. And you were, one of the things that I mean, I work with really courageous clients, and Laura's no exception, really to look in deep at our own stuff. What am I hanging on to? And there was a lot of language around the house, like this was our dream home, like the dream had burned, and all this. And we released all that language. We released all that a language that really talked about our attachment still to it, and we let the land just become land again. And I think that's one of the key fundamentals, isn't it? Is that as long as you've got attached energy, so if you're manifesting money and you're making the money mean something, whatever else is attached to the meaning of the money, it sort of starts spiraling out. So that was one place.
yeah,
Then you had, where Dan had a lawsuit that he was waiting on a settlement for.
yeah,
And I had asked you back in Washington, well, how much would you like? And you had actually said, I think it was double the amount that the lawyer had said was going to be possible. And I said, sure, that sounds fun. And we started working on opening the energy to bring that in.
and
And then,
energy opening statements, like, how would it look? How much fun would it be? All your fabulous opening energy statements that are
yeah,
great.
to open that energy wide. And we even wrote Dan in on that one as well, I think. And we use that a lot with getting the wheels moving smoother in your ship business as well, right? And getting the payments moving smoother, because there was people who were like maybe not always on time with payments and things, and we started getting the wheels using those questions, started moving the payment process. Like it was like bizarre, because you would say to me like, we're waiting on this, this client to bring this in, and I'm like, right, okay, let's do the energy here, let's open this up. So then we are looking um for this studio, right? Like the magic studio, and we think we find somewhere, but then it's like, no, that's not it. But we're holding the faith, Then we realize that there's something janky in the energy why this studio's not coming. So we start doing some inner work on that, like the Laura's framework again, which is why I included it in the $1 Million Book, because it's such a great framework. So we began investigating again. We began questioning again. What is it? What does this mean? We started looking at what it would mean for Laura to own her own. We found some janky energy of like fears, basically, of like, well, people will think I'm like super snobby, or they'll think I'm super fancy, or like these sort of things that these are very natural fears. So we work through them, and then the week that well, I say we because I haven't even been to the studio yet. I can't wait to come and visit. But the week that you get the studio, it's just this explosion of abundance that just happens. It's like the cork's being popped, and it's just like boom, boom, boom. So tell us a bit about that, because basically in the space of a few weeks, you brought in over $600,000 cash plus a studio.
Yeah. So we closed on the studio, and we knew we were in escrow for the, for the property. And, it was this like this, hey, when do we think we're going to close? When do we think we're going to close kind of thing? And then finally, and this was actually right at the beginning of when everything started to be shut down for the pandemic. And so they were like, well, we're not sure because of, we can't do this or we can't do that with the escrow companies and blah, 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 blah. And so we actually were just like back and forth emailing and got everything and got it all, like literally within a couple, I think within I can't remember the timing exactly, but I think within a week of closing on the studio, we closed on the property. And then within the next week after that, same thing, like things were super tight with the pandemic, and they were like, well, we're gonna have to send you this paperwork to sign, and then we're gonna have to do this and that for the settlement of the lawsuit. And so then that money came in, and that again was more than we had expected. And then the other,
I think it was more than double of what the lawyer had said it was going to be, like more. And even the lawyer was like, what? Like, what is this? He was like, I think he was questioning, like, what magic is this woman channeling?
well, and because he had even had a phone conversation with me when he got down to the real nitty gritty of the negotiating, and was like, this is what we're going to shoot for. And then, we'd be checking back in with them, and he'd be like, well, no, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. And then finally, and then the other beautiful part of that was really fun was that we had a friend of ours had initially referred us to this attorney and said, well, if you want a good attorney, you need this guy. And he ended up getting a referral fee. And normally, like, you think a referral fee might be, a couple $1,000s. And he ended up getting a really lovely check for way more than. He was like, is this decimal point in the right place? Because it was just,
it was insane. It was like 10 times the amount that
yeah,
you were expecting for him. And then you get this settlement that's more than double, which we cosmic ordered
yeah, it was
from the universe. And then you were able to apply for basically a grant that you weren't even needing to pay back as well, which was amazing.
yeah, for a business loan that we were able to work on, and that came in like within a couple of weeks. So within, like, I believe it was a space of a month, if it was even that long. It was just like, oh, now we got this loan, and you didn't know how long it was going to take for that money to come in, and next thing you know, it's in the bank. And so we were just like, okay, this is so fabulous. But I do have to say that do not doubt the energy of Joanna's checks in the mail dance, because that is fabulous. And we would do that. We change it up a little bit, because like a lot of people don't get necessarily checks in the mail anymore. So we just do the money in the bank dance, or we switch it up, checks in the mail, money in the bank. So, and we drug down into that one too. We're like, hey, we got to do our dance. We got to do our money dance. And so do not question the power of the money dance.
I know, the money dance. I was just thinking at the end of the $1 million experiment to ask people what did they learn. And I just thought there's just going to be this whole pile of people that are going to say, I learned to dance for money.
Which is a whole different thing.
That is a whole other story. So huge shifts in energy. So this massive influx of abundance during a pandemic, which is like freaking awesome. We're opening a studio during a pandemic. People are like, what, is she crazy? We launched 3 books during a pandemic. And we launched art kits during a pandemic, and building all of this. During that time as well, not only did you train as a LightWeb priestess, but you also trained in another healing model as well, which is not really available in the US. So you trained in that too, and really started to explore these avenues and stuff. In your own healing journey that you've been on, literally healing yourself, like the abundance is literally like the side effect of the healing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The change in energy it just really, I mean, the words that you use, the work that anybody can do on, letting go of old stories and releasing these things and just shifting I mean, I want to say shifting attitudes, but when you shift your attitude, you're really shifting your energy,
Yeah.
and, opening up, the idea of one of, some of my favorite affirmations. I mean, one of the most simple affirmations that I like is everything's always working out for me,
Yeah.
because it is. And then when you go a little deeper, I love the I'm open to unlimited abundance, and I'm open to infinite possibilities, because
Yeah.
you just don't know what, I mean, and I personally experienced those things, like infinite possibilities. Oh, here, win the lottery, and that was before I, knew how to work energy in a
With the
good way.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, work with the energy and do these things. But I think there's so many people even now, and I know a lot of people are having unfortunate situations, and I'm not going to diminish that. But for me, people are like, oh, how's that working out with you opening a business, right when everything shut down? Well, for me, it worked out, because everything's always working out for me. But, everything was closed at the time when we were working on the studio anyway, when we were
Mm.
painting, putting new flooring in, and we wouldn't have been able to be open. So that for me just took the pressure off. I didn't feel
Yeah.
pressure to like, oh my gosh, I've got to be open and I'm under a timeline. And, and there were challenges with that, because there were people who couldn't come in and work. And unfortunately, maybe for Dan, he ended up doing more work than he wanted to, but it worked out. And so, I think it's so important that to shift your energy and the language that you use. And, when you're saying things like, oh, I'm stuck in this whatever, or I'm, a starving artist, or I'm just a poor whatever. Oh my goodness, like feel the energy around that. Oh, it's awful. So like open it up and just
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
the opening of the energy. And it's also as well the focus, like one of the things that you said, like everything is always working out for me. Like that is focusing on what you desire, as opposed to, oh, well, how's that working out? Opening it during the pandemic must be terrible. Like it's such closed, it almost feels claustrophobic, the energy. And
Mhm.
actually, when we have the ability, all of us have this ability to just tell a better energy story, which creates better energy, which creates better results in life. And I love that, how you've embodied that. And I love how even though you are, like one of the reasons I really had it on my list, I was thinking about people that I wanted to interview. And one of the things that I really wanted to interview somebody who'd actually won the lottery, because I think that so many people, they think that's the thing that's going to solve all their problems. And that was certainly not the case for you. It brought some new problems with it, and then it brought a lot of ease and stuff like that. And I think one of the things where with knowing both you and Dan is like how wonderful and generous that you are with your abundance, which is for me, as being your coach, has been a joy, because I know that when you become more abundant, like everyone around you benefits. And I know that Dan did a really lovely thing in a restaurant. He's probably going to kill me for even bringing it up, but he did a lovely thing in the restaurant where he found out who was all working in that restaurant, and then gave them all extra big tips, like all of them. And I think there was about 10 or 12 people, you were telling me.
Yeah, and that was just a couple weeks ago, because the restaurants here in Michigan, everything's been closed down, and
Mhm.
they just reopened them for 25% capacity, so we can eat in. I mean, some of the restaurants were open for takeout and outside dining, but we can now eat inside again at 25% capacity. And so, we went out, and Dan loves to eat out anyway, and loves, probably because he's the one who cooks, he probably wants a break. But we went out for lunch, and I didn't even know what he was doing. I thought he was just having a conversation. He was talking to the bartender and saying, oh, hey, so what's it like for you guys now? And he said, well, we're all trying to work and we're a little bit busy. Some days are a little busier than others, but yeah. And next thing I know, Dan had asked him, well, how many people do you have working right now? And he, oh, about 10, 12 people, with the cooks and the whatever. And next thing I know, Dan said, I want to give these guys all a great big tip, and I was like, fine, and so I just hope, it's nice to be able to share that like you said, share the abundance and hopefully, make somebody's day a little brighter. And,
Yeah.
and that's it, just like share with people. And
I mean, it's one of my core real principles is that generosity and being able to share. And I think that this is how we really like move forward to changing the world and making the world a better place. And that the vibration of the act of kindness, the act of sharing abundance is such a beautiful vibration that I know for a fact that those people's lives were lifted, but you don't know what they went on to interact with in that lifted vibration. It might be that they were able to do something nice for their families, which then lifted that family's vibration, and it just ripples out. This is what I love about this work and what I love about all of it. So I think we've literally been all around the houses with you, Laura, and really just spoken about a lot about the energy. And I think the energy. So Laura does healing, and she also does LightWeb healing as well. So tell people where they can find you on the internet, and how they can get hold of you, and stuff like that.
yeah, so my website is www.lauramuirhead.com. And I'm on Instagram as it's Laura underscore Muirhead underscore. And then also, if you want to follow the studio, I'm on Instagram as Studio 161 by Laura.
Lovely. Perfect. Oh, I am so glad that we had this conversation, because I really wanted to speak to somebody that had won the lottery and, show that it's not always, an amazing thing. It's amazing. It's life-changing. But you know what? Here you are in this journey as well. And again, building another business, which is amazing. Even though you are the CFO of a multi-million-dollar company, and but we're building something that you are hugely passionate about, which is the artist, healer, and sage business.
Yeah, and I'm also, along with this studio, I've been able to, and Joanna was one of my guest speakers, but I've been able to start workshops that have to do with those types of things, and do the treatments that I do the healings, and to have the space to do all those things. But the one thing I did want to say about the lottery winning as well is that I know there's a lot of people who talk about, oh, when I win the lottery, I'm going to do this. And those are all great dreams. I'm not trying to diminish those either, but I'm not sure if you won, if those are really what you would do, because you're still the same person. You probably will change, hopefully for the better. But at the same time, I feel like it just gave me a little more freedom to be the person that I already was. I mean, it didn't really, I'm still here. I still like to wear my jeans and my sweatshirts, and I don't, my comfy shoes. Now, if you're someone who loves Jimmy shoes and want to spend all your money on that and you won the lottery, good for you. But I'm not sure that it would be what you think it is, but I hope everybody wins and and can share abundance with other people. But the ripple effect for sure is
I
amazing.
love that you shared this, because I was, when my business is this size, I will I will do daily yoga and my life will look like this. And then I was like, I caught myself in the story of it, like of what would happen as if by magic when I arrived at a certain place. And then I realized, but Joanna, you could do yoga right now. And I was like, oh yes, but Joanna, you could eat more organic, like vegetable based dinners right now. Vegan dinners right now. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right. I could, and I think sometimes you're so right, right? We think that the money is going to come and we are going to magically transform, but we have to actually do the transformation first. And sometimes actually it's the transformation that we do that actually leads to the income as well coming in. But the money can arrive, and it's not going it's going to make things easier. I For me, money is about choice. And when you have more money, you have more choices in life. It is absolutely about freedom, because that choice gives you freedom, and it makes really shitty situations in life sometimes a lot easier to handle, like the fire, for instance. Being able to go to that mall and purchase things, makes things a lot easier. But it's still, but you are still the same person, and it's just, and so if you have these visions that your life is going to turn into this super awesome amazing thing the moment that you were quote unquote wealthy, you need to start now.
You can be that awesome person, just to be it now.
Absolutely, you can be that awesome person right now. That's so true. That's a beautiful note to finish up on. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Laura, and sharing your story with us.
No, it's been my honor. Thank you so much.